The bathroom was small, tiled in pale blue, and smelled faintly of bleach. But it wasn't the smell that made Detective Laura Bishop's stomach turn. It was the sight. In the bathtub lay the body of a young woman, headless, her pale skin stark against the porcelain. The water had long since drained, but faint pink stains still clung to the bottom. A dark brown suitcase sat propped against the wall. Inside it, wrapped in plastic, was a missing head. Laura's hands shook as she pulled her gloves tighter. On the counter, next to a half-used bar of soap, lay a Missouri driver's license. Emily Carter, age 28. The boarding pass on the floor told the rest of the story. She had arrived less than 36 hours ago, all the way from St. Louis, to surprise her boyfriend in Athens, Greece. Now, Emily was dead, and the man she came to see was nowhere to be found. Before Laura could take another step, a faint creak came from somewhere in the apartment. Someone else was here? Emily Carter's friends would later say she was the kind of person who believed in grand gestures. She wasn't one for halfway love. If she cared about you, you knew it. That's why, when her boyfriend Jason Moreno moved overseas for a short-term job contract, Emily didn't hesitate to plan a surprise visit. Her life in Missouri had been quiet lately. She worked as a dental hygienist, rented a small apartment in Springfield, and spent weekends with her parents and younger sister. But her heart had been somewhere else since Jason left 6 months ago. They'd met 2 years earlier at a music festival, and Jason's charm had been instant. Tall, quick with a smile, and always talking about adventure, he made Emily feel like her life could be bigger than the small circle she'd known. When he first left, they called and texted every day. But over the last month, Jason had grown distant. Emily brushed it off. He was working, adjusting to a new country, and maybe just tired. Still, she decided that if he wouldn't come home, she'd go to him. She told her best friend, Megan, only the basics. I'm going to see him. He has no idea I'm coming. The morning of her flight, Emily packed her favorite summer dress, the one Jason said made her look like sunshine, along with small gift for him, American candy, a St. Louis Cardinals cap, and the framed photo they'd taken the night before he left. Her journey was long, 2 flights and a layover in Paris. She sent Jason a casual good morning text before boarding, keeping her plans secret. When she finally landed in Athens, she took a taxi to his apartment complex, excitement fluttering in her chest. She stood at his door, luggage in hand, heart pounding. But when the door opened, Jason didn't look happy to see her. His eyes widened, but not with joy. "Emily, what are you doing here?" His voice was low, almost panicked. "I want to surprise you," she laughed, stepping forward to hug him. But he hesitated, blocking the doorway for a second before letting her in. The apartment smelled faintly of cigarettes and something stronger, bleach. She noticed a wine glass on the counter, lipstick smudged on the rim. Not her shade. They sat awkwardly, Emily trying to keep the mood light, while Jason seemed distracted, glancing at his phone every few minutes. She didn't know then that he was texting someone else. That night, Emily posted a single Instagram story, a photo of the Acropolis at sunset, captioned "Finally here." It would be her last post. The next morning, neighbors heard shouting from Jason's apartment around 9 a.m. By noon, the hallway was quiet again. But by evening, Jason was gone, and Emily would never leave the building alive. 2 days later, Detective Laura Bishop stepped off a flight from Missouri to Athens. Emily's parents had begged her department for help after hearing of a murder-suicide rumor from the embassy. Laura didn't believe in rumors. She believed in evidence, and the evidence, now staring up at her from the bathtub, was unlike anything she'd seen in her 15 years on the job. As she turned toward the sound of the creak, her hand went to her weapon. Someone had been here the whole time, and they might not be done yet. Detective Laura Bishop froze, listening. The creak had come from a hallway that connected the bathroom to the small living room. Her instinct screamed at her that she wasn't alone. She stepped out slowly, her boots silent against the tile. The hallway was dim. Only a sliver of daylight from the half-open balcony door lit the space. A light breeze drifted in, carrying the faint scent of cigarette smoke from the street below. "Police," she called in a firm voice. "Come out with your hands up." Silence. Laura's eyes swept the living room. The couch cushions were askew, and an open duffel bag lay on the coffee table, clothes spilling out. A half-empty bottle of cheap red wine sat beside it, along with cell phone charging on the floor. But what caught her attention was a small smear of what looked like blood on the balcony railing. She moved toward it cautiously, her mind racing. If the person had fled, it might have been moments ago. If they were still here, from the corner of her eye, she saw a shadow shift near the kitchen. Her pulse kicked up. She drew her weapon and stepped forward, only to find a man crouched low, his hands trembling. He was in his mid-30s, olive-skinned, with messy black hair and wide, frightened eyes. "Don't shoot." "I didn't do anything," he said quickly, raising his hands. Laura kept her gun trained on him. "Name?" "Adrian. Adrian Papadopoulos. I live next door." His voice cracked. "I heard yelling the other morning. Then I saw things. I came to check because the door was open." Laura narrowed her eyes. "And you didn't call the police?" Adrian swallowed hard. I was scared. I saw Jason leaving with a suitcase. He looked different, cold. I thought maybe it was none of my business." The words made Laura's stomach turn. In murder cases, it was always someone's business, especially when the victim had flown across an ocean to see the man now missing. She lowered her weapon slightly, but kept her stance guarded. "Tell me everything you saw." Adrian's story was halting at first. He said he'd known Jason only casually. They exchanged greetings in the hallway. Nothing more. 2 mornings ago, he heard a loud argument from Jason's apartment. The voices were muffled, but he caught snippets. "Wire, and you don't get to," followed by a loud crash. After that, silence. Then, later that afternoon, he saw Jason leave carrying a large suitcase, locking the door behind him. Adrian thought nothing of it until the next day, when he smelled something strong, bleach, seeping into the hallway. That's when he decided to look. Laura listened, her mind mapping out the timeline. The bleach, the missing boyfriend, the headless body, it all pointed to Jason. But without proof, the Greek police might not prioritize the case, especially since Jason was an American who could have already fled the country. She radioed in the details, requesting immediate coordination with Athens PD. A uniformed officer arrived to take Adrian's statement, freeing Laura to examine the rest of the apartment. In the bedroom, she found more troubling signs. 2 wine glasses on the nightstand, a crumpled airline baggage tag with Jason's name, and tucked under the bed, a woman's scarf, deep red, stained with what looked like blood at one end. Her phone buzzed. It was a local liaison officer, speaking in a rush. "Detective Bishop, we just checked passenger records. Jason Moreno boarded a ferry to Santorini yesterday morning. No return ticket. If he's there, he could be gone by nightfall." Laura's grip on the phone tightened. The island was full of tourists and easy escape routes. If they didn't move fast, he'd vanish. She stepped back into the living room, eyes scanning the suitcase in the corner, the one with Emily's head. Inside, under the plastic, was something else, a folded piece of paper, stained but legible. It was a printed email. The sender? A woman named Lydia Carras. The subject line read, "Can't wait to be with you again." Laura's pulse spiked. Jason wasn't just hiding. He was running to someone, and if Lydia was with him, she might be the only person who knew exactly what happened in that apartment. Laura looked at the clock. If she left now, she could be on the next flight to Santorini. But something about Adrian's nervous eyes and his decision to hide in the apartment gnawed at her. What if Jason wasn't the only one who knew more than he was saying? Detective Laura Bishop didn't like rushing headlong into assumptions. In her years on the job, she'd learned that killers weren't always who they seemed in witnesses, especially nervous ones, sometimes hid the truth to protect themselves. Still, time was working against her. If Jason Moreno really had fled to Santorini to meet this Lydia Carras, he could disappear by sundown. She stood in Jason's living room, weighing her options. Adrian Papadopoulos sat on the couch, twisting his hands together like he was trying to wring the fear out of them. "You're coming with me," Laura said finally. His head snapped up. "Where?" "To the police station." We're getting a full statement from you on the record." Adrian hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, but you don't understand Jason's dangerous." Laura arched a brow. "How dangerous?" Adrian swallowed. "The kind who doesn't forgive. A few months ago, he had a fight with another neighbor. The man ended up in the hospital. Broken ribs. He said he fell down the stairs, but I know Jason pushed him." That detail crawled into Laura's mind like a cold draft. If Jason had a history of violence and was now running with a suitcase full of secrets, this case was more urgent than ever. By early afternoon, Laura was at Athens PD headquarters. The Greek detective assigned to the case were polite, but clearly stretched thin. Tourist season meant a spike in thefts, assaults, and missing persons. A beheaded American woman was a nightmare for their press office, but also meant they couldn't afford bad optics. Detective Nikos Marinos, a tall, gruff man with a salt and pepper beard, joined Laura in the briefing room. "We confirm Moreno took the ferry to Santorini. Passenger manifest says he was traveling alone." Laura slid the stained email across the table. "Not for long. This woman, Lydia Carras. You know her?" Marino scanned it. "Carras is a common name, but we can run it." As they spoke, a forensics officer entered carrying a sealed evidence bag. "The red scar from under Jason's bed. Blood matches the victim," he said. "But there's a second DNA profile. Female." Laura and Marinos exchanged a look. "Lydia," Laura said. That evening, Laura boarded a small propeller plane to Santorini, her stomach nodding with each mile. The island glowed below in the sunset, whitewashed buildings clinging to cliffs above the Aegean Sea. Tourists milled about the airport, oblivious to the fact that somewhere among them, a fugitive might be sipping wine with a new lover. Laura had a single lead, a hotel booking under Lydia Carras's name at a boutique place in Oahe, overlooking Caldera. She didn't know if Jason would be there, but she knew this. People who run from a crime often run to something familiar. When she arrived at the hotel just after 9 p.m., the lobby was nearly empty. The night clerk, a young man scrolling on his phone, confirmed Lydia was checked in. "Room 204, he said, handing over the key card without hesitation after Laura flashed her badge. Laura took the stairs 2 at a time. Her breath slowed as she approached the door. Voices murmured inside, a man's deep tone, a woman's laugh. She pressed her ear against the wood. "Had to do it," the man said. She showed up out of nowhere, started asking questions. She knew. The woman replied, her voice sharp. "Jason, you could have just sent her away. Now." Laura didn't hear the rest. Her hand was already on her weapon. She knocked hard, 3 times. The voices stopped. Silence. Then the lock clicked. The door opened an inch, just enough for Laura to see Jason Moreno's face. He looked thinner than in his photos, but his eyes were the same, dark, calculating. And then the door slammed shut. Inside, feet pounded toward the balcony. Laura had seconds to decide. Break down the door and risk losing them, or head for the balcony from the outside and cut off their escape. Her instincts told her the choice she made next could be the difference between catching a killer and watching him vanish into the night. Laura didn't hesitate. She turned and bolted down the hall, taking the stairs 2 at a time. The hotel's narrow courtyard opened to a set of exterior steps that led up toward the rooms on the 2nd floor. If Jason and Lydia were running for the balcony, she could intercept them from below. The warm Santorini night air was heavy with the smell of grilled fish from a nearby taverna. A couple of tourists looked up from their wine glasses as Laura sprinted past, her badge flashing from the lanyard around her neck. She reached the back of the hotel just in time to see movement on the balcony of room 204. Jason was lowering a rope, improvised from knotted bedsheets, while Lydia crouched behind him, a small duffel slung across her shoulder. "Police, stop." Laura's voice cut through the night. Jason froze, his eyes locking on her. Then, without a word, he shoved Lydia toward the railing. She clambered down first, bare feet finding purchase on the wall. Jason followed in a rush, but the makeshift rope jerked under his weight, sending them both stumbling when they hit the ground. They took off running through the narrow alley behind the hotel. Laura gave chase, her footsteps echoing off white plaster walls. The maze of streets twisted left and right, and the sound of their hurried breathing grew fainter as they darted through a crowd of late-night shoppers. Laura's training told her focus on the one most likely to talk, Lydia. The woman kept glancing over her shoulder, her fear almost palpable. Laura pushed harder, weaving between startled tourists, closing the gap inch by inch. Finally, she lunged, catching Lydia's arm and yanking her to a stop. The duffel hit the ground with a heavy thud. Jason turned back for a split second, his jaw tight, but then he bolted into the crowd and vanished into the dark, back at the local police station. Lydia sat in a small interview room, arms folded tight, lips pressed into a thin line. Laura leaned against the wall, letting the silence stretch. "You know what happened to Emily Carter?" Laura said evenly, "You were in that apartment." Lydia's eyes flicked up, quick and defiant. "I wasn't there when it happened. But you were there after," Laura pressed. "You helped clean it up. That's why your DNA is on the scarf." Lydia's jaw twitched. Jason said she was obsessed with him, said she showed up uninvited and started threatening him. He told me she attacked him, and she stopped. He said it was self-defense. Laura kept her face neutral, though her stomach churned. "And you believed him?" I don't know," Lydia admitted, her voice small now. He told me what to do. I helped wrap her up. I was scared. He said if anyone found out, they'd think I was part of it." The Greek detectives watching through the glass looked grim. This was enough to charge Lydia with being an accessory. But Jason was still out there. Laura leaned closer. "Where is he going?" Lydia hesitated, then exhaled. "There's a boat. He has a friend with a fishing vessel. They're supposed to meet at the old port in Fyra. Midnight." Laura's pulse quickened. That gave her less than 2 hours. The old port was a perfect place to disappear. Fishing boats, private yachts, ferries heading to dozens of islands. If Jason made it onto one, finding him would be a nightmare. At 11:45 p.m., Laura crouched in the shadows near the docks, eyes scanning every boat. The water lapped quietly against the wooden pilings, the air thick with salt and diesel fumes. A few fishermen smoked by the railings, their voices low. Then she saw him, Jason, moving quickly down the pier, a hood pulled over his head. He didn't look back. He stepped onto a small fishing boat, where a heavy-set man was already untying the ropes. Laura reached for her radio to call it in. But before she could speak, the boat's engine coughed to life. Jason was about to vanish into black water. The engine's growl sliced through a quiet night as the fishing boat began to drift away from the dock. Laura's heart hammered. Every second counted. She burst from her hiding spot, sprinting down the pier. "Police! Stop the boat!" she shouted, her voice echoing across the water. Jason turned at the sound, his face illuminated for a brief moment by the boat's small cabin light. His eyes widened in recognition, but instead of freezing, he smirked. That smirk sent a cold wave through Laura. He thought he was already beyond her reach. The heavy-set man at the wheel throttled forward, and the gap between the dock and the boat widened. Laura didn't think. She acted. She ran the last few steps and leapt, her boots slamming onto the slick deck. The boat rocked violently under her weight, and the fisherman cursed in Greek. Jason lunged forward, shoving her hard. She stumbled but caught the railing before she could hit the water. He came at her again, swinging his fist. She ducked, driving her shoulder into his chest, forcing him back toward the stern. The fisherman abandoned the wheel, moving to help Jason, but Laura drew her gun in one swift motion. "Hands where I can see them," she barked, her voice steady even as the boat pitched on the waves. Jason's smug expression faltered. "You can't touch me here," he hissed. "We're not in your jurisdiction." "Lucky for you," Laura said. "The Greek police are waiting at the dock." By the time they got back to shore, uniformed officers were already lined up along the pier. Jason was handcuffed and hauled away, cursing in both English and Spanish, his words venomous. The fisherman was detained for aiding his escape. At the station, Laura sat across from Jason in the interrogation room. The walls seemed to close in as the fluorescent light hummed above them. "Emily Carter flew across the world to see you," Laura began. She brought gifts. She wanted to surprise you. And you killed her. Jason leaned back, his cuffed hands resting on the table. She wasn't who you think she was. Then tell me who she was. Laura shot back. Jason's jaw worked, as if you're deciding whether to spin a story or stay silent. Finally, he said, she came in swinging. Said she knew about Lydia. Said she'd ruined me. She grabbed a knife from the kitchen. He shrugged. I defended myself. Laura's eyes locked on his. Defending yourself doesn't mean decapitating someone. That's not fear, that's rage. Jason's smirk returned. She pushed me too far. And I wasn't about to let her win. Later, Laura met with Detective Marinos to review the forensics report. Blood spatter patterns in the kitchen didn't match Jason's story. Emily's fingerprints were only on her suitcase, her gifts, and her phone, nothing in the kitchen. And the angle of the wounds showed she'd been attacked while seated. It wasn't self-defense. It was an ambush. The final piece fell into place when forensics recovered partial prints on the plastic wrap used to conceal Emily's head. They belonged to Jason alone. Lydia's prints were only on cleaning supplies, meaning she likely came after the murder to help cover it up, not to commit it. Still, Jason was refusing to give a full confession. And without one, Laura knew the defense could try to spin the story as a lover's quarrel gone wrong. But then, an unexpected break came. The Greek police recovered footage from a neighbor's door camera, audio only, but clear. Emily's voice could be heard pleading, Jason, please, let's just talk. I came all this way. Then Jason's voice, low and furious. You shouldn't have come here. A loud thud. A muffled scream. Silence. Laura listened to the recording, her fists clenched. It was enough. Jason's smug wall of lies was about to crumble. But what she didn't expect was that the arrest was only the beginning. Someone else was still trying to shield him, and they were about to make their move. It was well past midnight when Detective Laura Bishop stepped out of the Santorini police station into the cool sea air. Jason was locked up, Lydia was in custody, and the case should have felt close to over. But her gut told her it wasn't. The island was too quiet, the streets too empty. Even the usual hum of tourist nightlife felt muted. She checked her phone. No new messages from Athens PD, but one missed call from a block number. She didn't think much of it until her phone buzzed again. Same block number. She answered. A low male voice spoke, distorted, as if run through a filter. Detective Bishop, you have something that doesn't belong to you. Laura's pulse quickened. Who is this? You have Jason. The voice said calmly. That's a problem. You're going to make it right. I don't take orders from criminals. Laura snapped. If you know what's good for you, you'll tell me who you are and how you're connected to him. The voice chuckled, a slow, unsettling sound. You've got 24 hours to let him go, or you'll start finding more bodies. This time, tourists. The line went dead. Laura rushed back inside to find Detective Marinos. When she told him what happened, his face darkened. We had whispers of a smuggling ring operating out of the Cyclades. Jason's fishing boat contact wasn't just a friend. He's one of their runners. It made sense now. Jason wasn't just some hot-headed boyfriend who snapped. He had connections. Dangerous ones. Marinos leaned forward. If this ring is protecting him, or silence anyone who could testify against him, meaning you and Lydia. Laura's mind raced. Lydia was already in protective custody, but she wasn't exactly cooperative. Jason was under guard, but the local jail wasn't built to withstand a determined extraction. The next morning, Laura visited Lydia again. The woman looked exhausted, her dark hair messy, her eyes rimmed red. They're coming for him, Laura said without preamble. And if they can't get to him, they'll come for you. Lydia's eyes widened. They wouldn't. They would. Laura cut in. Who are they? Lydia hesitated. Chewing her lip, they call him Costas. He runs the docks in Piraeus. Smuggling, loans, debts. Jason owed him a lot of money. That's why he took this job overseas. He was supposed to work it off. Laura leaned in. Did Costas know about Emily? Lydia's gaze dropped to the table. He knows everything. Jason called him right after it happened. Said he'd taken care of a problem. By noon, Word reached the station that a private charter boat had been spotted circling just offshore, crewed by men who didn't look like tourists. Laura knew this was it. Costas's people weren't going to wait. They were here, and they were coming tonight. The Greek police scrambled to move Jason to a secure facility on the mainland, but that meant getting him to the ferry port without being intercepted on the winding cliffside roads. Laura volunteered to ride in the lead car, her eyes scanning every shadow, every parked vehicle. Halfway to the port, a black SUV appeared in the rearview mirror, its headlights off. Laura's hand went to her radio. "We've got company." The SUV accelerated, closing the gap, and then the gunfire started. The first shot shattered the rear windshield of the police van carrying Jason Moreno. Officers ducked instinctively, shouting over the sudden roar of gunfire. Laura, in the lead car, slammed the brakes and spun her steering wheel, blocking the narrow cliffside road. The black SUV screeched to a halt behind the van. 3 men jumped out, faces covered with black scarves, each holding an assault rifle. "Down!" Laura barked to the officers. Bullets pinged off the asphalt, kicking up sparks. One of the Greek officers returned fire, forcing the gunmen to take cover behind their SUV. Inside the van, Jason was shouting, his voice muffled but frantic. "Don't shoot! Don't shoot! I'm in here." It was clear he wasn't worried about the police. He was trying to signal his rescuers. Laura's stomach turned. If they got to him, he'd vanish into Costas's network, and Emily Carter's murder would never see justice. The gunman advanced, using the SUV as a shield. Laura ducked behind her car door, firing 2 controlled shots. One of the men dropped his rifle and fell, clutching his shoulder. The others hesitated, exchanging a quick glance before one broke off and sprinted toward the van. Laura bolted from cover, her boots pounding the pavement. She intercepted the man halfway, tackling him hard to the ground. His rifle clattered away as they wrestled. He was bigger, stronger, but Laura used her training, twisting his arm until he yelped in pain and dropped a concealed pistol. The remaining gunman saw his advantage slipping and retreated to the SUV, firing a few wild shots to cover his escape. The driver gunned the engine, leaving their injured accomplices behind. The tires screeched, echoing against the cliffside, until the sound faded into the night. Back at the port, Jason was pale and silent as officers hustled him onto the secure ferry. He sat shackled between 2 armed guards, glaring at Laura like she'd just stolen his last chance. "You think you've won," he muttered as she passed. "I think Emily deserves better than you," Laura replied coldly. On the mainland, Jason was taken to a maximum security holding facility. Lydia was transferred under police protection, still shaken from the attempted extraction. But Laura's job wasn't done. Costas was still out there, and until he was behind bars, Jason would have hoped, and Emily's family would never truly feel safe. Late that night, a break came in the form of a phone call from Detective Marinos. "We found Costas," he said. "Warehouse outside Piraeus. You want in?" Laura didn't hesitate. "I'm already on my way." When they arrived, the warehouse sat in darkness, only a faint glow visible through the dusty windows. Officers in tactical gear surrounded the building, waiting for the signal. Laura's heart pounded. Inside those walls was a man who tried to silence her, protect Jason, and threaten innocent lives. Marinos looked at her. "On 3. 1, 2. The battering ram hit the door before he could finish 3. Laura rushed in, weapon up, only to find Costas standing at a table, hands in the air, smiling like he'd been expecting her all along. Costas's smile was the kind Laura had seen before, the smug, calculated grin of a man who thought he was untouchable. He stood in the center of the warehouse like a king in his castle, surrounded by stacks of crates that smelled faintly of diesel and salt. "You've been busy, Detective Bishop," he said in accented English, "but you're far from home. Be careful whose game you play." Laura kept her gun steady. "You made my game the moment you covered for Jason Moreno." Costas's eyes flickered, just for a moment, at the mention of Jason's name. "I protect my people. It's what a good man does." "A good man doesn't help hide a woman's body," Laura shot back. Marinos moved in with a team, cuffing Costas before he could respond. We got you on smuggling, aiding a fugitive, and obstruction in a homicide case. Marino said, "That's enough to keep you locked away for a long time." Costas didn't resist. He only smiled wider. "We'll see." With Costas in custody, the rest of his network began to unravel. Lydia, facing years in prison, agreed to testify in exchange for a reduced sentence. Her testimony, combined with the forensics and the neighbor's audio recording, painted the full picture for the Greek courts. Emily Carter had flown thousands of miles to surprise the man she loved. Jason Moreno had not only rejected her, but silenced her forever, then tried to erase her from the world. The trial drew international attention. Emily's parents sat in the front row every day, their faces pale but determined. Laura flew back to Missouri to escort them to Athens for verdict. When the judge read the sentence, life imprisonment without parole, Jason showed no emotion. He didn't look at Emily's family, didn't speak, didn't ask for mercy. Lydia received 8 years for her role in the cover-up. Costas, thanks to mountains of evidence linking him to multiple crimes, was sentenced to 40 years. After the trial, Laura stood outside the courthouse with Emily's mother. The Greek sun was warm, but the woman's hands were cold when they gripped Laura's. "You brought her justice," she said softly. "That's more than we thought we'd ever have." Laura nodded, though the weight in her chest didn't lift. Justice didn't bring Emily back. It didn't erase the cruelty of what had been done to her. But it was something solid in a world that often offered nothing at all. As she watched Emily's parents walk away, Laura knew she'd never forget the sight of that bathtub, the bleach, the suitcase. She'd never forget the sound of Emily's voice on that recording, pleading for her life. And she knew that somewhere out there would be another case, another victim, another fight. But for now, Emily Carter could rest.